us a little about your app and, congratulations on your multiple accomplishments that you have, as I read through your introduction. So amazing to see that you've achieved so much through the work that you're doing. And tell us a little about how did the idea to launch this app come to you and what does it really do? How does it work?
Of course. Thank you so much, first of all. Um, the app came from a personal experience. It was something that had been dawning on me for a while about how do Afghan, specifically Kabul residents, because Kabul was a main point for attacks and fighting over the capital from all different fronts, about how people in Afghanistan, specifically in the larger cities, get information. And of course, we're a community-oriented culture, so we connect and we are able to stay in touch with each other, but there needed to be something where you could get verified, real-time, 24/7 monitored information, especially for a city that has been known for 2 decades as one which has been crippled by instability, by war. And that day came to me personally when I was walking home from work. I was at the president's office at the time, and I never was the kind of person to take cars from the president's office. I enjoyed walking from my work to home. It was usually about a 10-15 minute walk, and I would mainly go through the city center, so the main points of urban movement, the large areas of the city. That's where I usually pass through. And just, I would say, about a few minutes from turning onto my street, there was a few people running, and there's a little bit of a commotion, and there was a man he was very uneasy, and he was saying, he's going to do something, his vest isn't working, he's saying something about his vest. And as I was seeing the crowd, I started to run as well because I didn't know what was going on. And as soon as I turned the corner, this huge explosion behind my back had happened. And I looked over, and it was right behind us on the main street. And following that experience, it felt like my street became an isolated little world because no one in the rest of the city knew what was happening. I was texting my friends, I was texting my family, did you hear this explosion? And they were maybe 20 minutes away or 10 minutes away, and they were like, no, I didn't hear anything. And that was the light bulb in my head, where how is it that we're all in the city, an explosion like this can happen, but no one knows about it? And by the time that it's verified, maybe other people's lives could be in danger. So this very personal experience reminded me of how isolating it can be to be in Kabul or any crisis city across the world where information is so difficult to get, trustworthy information. And the next day, right away, I was already drafting ideas of accountability, transparency, information seeking. And the first word that came to mind was hisabdoi, and a lot of other words with this hisab, the meaning of accountability, transparency, things like that. And then ihtisab eventually came about because ihtisab, as you know, is an Urdu word, but there are remnants of it in Dari and Pashto. So it belongs to everyone. It's not a direct word in my country. And I've been working on it ever since, on this mission of how to provide real-time, verified, trustworthy information for all Afghans. And that's been my mission since that day in 2018.
You are from Afghanistan, and one can say that you grew up at a time when perhaps things were slightly better, perhaps better than what they are right now in Afghanistan. What are your comments on the various rules which are being put together, including girls not being allowed access to education all over again? We're seeing history repeating itself, and the recent one that said that all girls and women need to cover their full face in Afghanistan. How do you think this is going to be impacting lives of women in the country now?
I can safely say that I was not surprised at least. It's what's infuriating for me is that I had been expecting this, and even yesterday there was a woman, an Afghan woman, who wrote an op-ed about this saying the peace talks will fail, and she wrote that in 2020. And it's infuriating because I would say without a doubt that the majority of Afghan women knew this day would happen, and we would tell international stakeholders, we would fight against it, we would say, okay, you want to deliberate with them, have very specific points where they must meet those points before you even get to the point of power sharing. What are the specific points that you will keep the Taliban accountable for? That never happened. And because that never happened, you have these floodgates where they are doing everything again like 1996. We are repeating everything. And I was speaking to a very notable journalist in Afghanistan yesterday, and he told me that it will only get worse. They are trying to completely disconnect Afghanistan from the world. Eventually, they will try to work with other countries to disconnect access to telecommunications. They will try to completely disconnect any citizen journalists or people on the ground working. And they are completely, they're putting Afghan women in the shadows, not even shadows, I would say shackles, binding them to make sure that this new generation of educated, independent Afghan women and girls are shut away, are put away, because you're seeing these protests of Afghan women. There was a protest in Kabul University recently where the women are standing boldly and saying, we will not accept this version of Islam. It's not a version of Islam. It's Talibanism. And the Taliban are shocked to see, look at the women of 1996 and look at the Afghan women of 2022. They are standing for themselves. They don't want this. And that makes them more angry because they want the women to do whatever they say, and they're not. They're standing up for their rights, even in such a terrifying and dangerous environment. They're protesting. They're standing for their rights, and their pushback will be even more worse. I fear, but I am not in the least surprised. It is the most excruciating thing to see, because the world, and I would say Afghan men, have left this hellhole, to be honest, that's permeating and allowing Afghan women to lose their fundamental rights, which they fought for over the last 20 years.
Yeah. Do you think the international community is not doing enough to pressurize Taliban to change its laws towards women? Do you think we'll see any changes happen in the future, or do you think this is how it's going to be for the rest of God knows how long?
Yeah, there was Heather Barr from the Human Rights Watch. She said something very poignant recently, where these condemnations, these letters from the UN, from the embassies, where they say, we strongly condemn these attacks, we strongly condemn these policies by the Taliban. There's been almost 20 of these condemnation reports with absolutely nothing regarding specific points of action. We condemn, and therefore we will do ABC. We are seeing this knee-jerk reaction from the international community where they feel the onus to say, we feel that this is wrong, but we do not want to take that next step. And this is the point that people should be focusing on, is we don't need any more condemnation. We know that. We know what is happening is terrifying, is unjust, is inhumane. But what is the international community going to do to facilitate accountability measures? And it seems like Afghanistan truly is not the focus of the international community. It's like a sore for them that they're just tired of. But they also have to understand that they've had a very direct position in 20 years of Afghan women's development, of their rights, of entrepreneurs, of technologists, of politicians, of judges in the judiciary. The international community supported this movement. How unjust is it now that they are just saying, we will observe and we will acknowledge, but we won't take that extra step? And I don't see anything in the most recent few months of that changing. We did recently see the UN Special Rapporteur for Afghanistan, Mr. Bennett. He just was in Afghanistan for a short time. We'll see what he does with his position. I mean, obviously, it's just an observatory role. He can't really do anything. You know, he can suggest things for the General Assembly and for the Human Rights Council. Hopefully, he uses that platform to suggest good things that should happen next to keep the Taliban accountable, but that remains to be seen.
Yeah.